There's no one signed up for public participation, so we will move straight into the action agenda. Number 13, excuse me, items considered in executive session. May I have a motion? Mr. Gant.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we approve the selected employment items shown in Exhibit A.
Is there a second? Ms. Baumgartner seconds. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please raise your hands. All opposed, that passes 7-0. Next is number 14. I'm sure we'll have a report, but why don't we go ahead and get a motion? You want to, Mr. Gant?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that we give first reading approval of the 2016 capital budget shown in Exhibit B, with the exception of one item, which is item 33.
Okay, is there a second? Ms. Baumgartner seconds. And we will have discussion after. Is it Mr. Carlin, are you going to present? Okay. Or Mr. Richardson, I'm not sure which.
Okay, great. Well, good evening, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Hefner, staff. Again, it's a great opportunity to present to you for first reading approval of the capital budget for the FY15 and 16 year. Before I begin, I had been looking for this quote for the last 2 months, and I finally found it. This is a quote by Eric Hoffer, and I think it describes better than anything the intent that we have in our district to maintain our facilities in good working order. I can tell you from experiences I had in Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Oman that you can go in, you can do wonderful things for people and build them all types of infrastructure, buildings, those types of things. But if they don't have the means or the funds to maintain them, then it's not doing a whole lot of good. And what we are intent on doing in this district is making sure that we maintain our physical plant in an excellent manner and providing the best facilities that we can to our students. Before I get into the slide presentation itself, the board had asked for a number of items in the board packet that I'd like to cover briefly. Number one, the floor plan for Dutch Fork Middle School front office conversion. And the intent of that project, I'm not sure exactly what order you have that in your board packet, but is it the floor plan's in there? Okay. The intent of that project, a number of our schools, you will recall a few years ago that we had a challenge with making sure that we could allow our public to come into our schools, of course, but we had a secure means for entry and then access into the school. And anybody just couldn't walk into the building without being addressed before, and just to make sure we have eyes on folks that are coming in and out of our schools once the school day has begun. We did that at 4 of our elementary schools, and we also did a very, I'll say superficial job of that at Dutch Fork Middle School. It did address the need, but what it did not do was accommodate our visitors very well and make it a welcoming environment for our community. And so what this plan attempts to do is to correct that error and certainly secure the school, but also provide the access that folks need that can come, and if they're waiting, they'll have an adequate area to do that in. Be glad to answer any questions you may have on that.
Are there any questions about the changes? One thing you mentioned to me is how you were able to make the office larger. Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Well, in order to do the initial work that we did, we actually had to take some office space over to create that front entry. And if you look on the left side of the plan, you can see how the entrance is currently. It comes off the left side of the plan. It's a very small room that outside door leads into. You can see it says lobby on the left side, but it's a fairly small area. On the right side of the plan, you can see where there are 2 additional offices that have been added adjacent to the reception area. And that will put those offices back for service, as well as providing a conference room below the waiting area. If you can see that on the right side of the plan. Does that make sense? And so we're taking some of that existing space that wasn't really needed and using it a little bit better.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Secondly, you asked us to submit a tally of some of the HVAC replacement projects we had done from, well, the data you have there is from approximately 2001 through 2014. And you can see some of those projects that we've taken care of over those years. In every budget that I've submitted since I've been here, we have some form of heating, ventilation, and air conditioning replacement in there. But what we're not doing is continually replacing the same system. We typically have to replace those systems in phases, both because of the cost and also because it's very difficult to get a sizable project done during the couple of months we have during the summer. So we break them into phases.
That was one of my questions, and I do appreciate you clarifying that, because when I saw it earlier, I mistakenly thought that when we said we were changing the air conditioning maybe at Irma Middle School, HVAC, that it was the whole. So now I understand that we have these in several phases.
Yes, ma'am.
Because you can't really do them all at once.
No.
So that makes a whole lot of difference. It really did clarify. So it is clear that you have a very detailed plan for maintaining our HVAC systems, and we are doing it on a schedule.
Absolutely.
As opposed to my words, unfortunately, all the time. So thank you for that clarification.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there other questions? Yes, Ms.
I have
Hammond.
a quick one, since this is such an important ongoing thing that we sort of anticipate. Do most of the companies, though, Mr. Carlin, have a good a warranty? You know, since it's not like Ms. Watson said when we were worried that it was the whole system, sometimes it's just certain parts, but it is a major expense. And when you told me we vary our companies that we use, and do we get good warranties? Then,
We
'cause
do.
We are a big customer of needing this, and it's an ongoing.
We do. The typical warranty on any work we do in the district is a 1-year warranty. However, on HVAC systems, we typically get a 5-year warranty on the compressors. And we have enjoyed very good work from local contractors who have a vested interest in doing good work for us.
For their reputation.
And also, we limit the amount of manufacturers that we allow in our district as well, to make sure we're getting quality products.
Any other questions about the HVAC replacements? Okay, next.
Okay, and a third item was Mr. Richardson and I had identified a item on the Capitol, which of course is still there, and it's called, if I can find it, School Identified Needs. You know, of course, every time we approve one of these budgets, there's something that's going to come up during the year, but there's also some things that the schools have identified that we want to make sure we can take care of for them, whether it involves an academic program or something that comes up. We've sat down with every school, and in the third packet there, you'll see what's titled School Identified Needs. Now, that is not an exhaustive list, and not all those projects have been fleshed out, nor do we know which ones exactly we're going to do, but you can see the kind of items that the schools have requested, and if we have the dollars available in the budget, we'll attempt to address many of those items. It'll depend certainly on how many dollars we have available.
Ms. Watson,
Questions, yeah.
is he speaking of the list that they put at our desk?
Yes.
Right, okay.
The school identified
Um,
needs.
That was my question, and you're doing this, and I told Ms. Watson, I appreciated some of her questions the last time. I think it is important, what I hear from constituents from each of our schools is, you know, they do have a process to identify the needs, and there's a lot of input. Our principals get input from teachers, they get it from staff members in, you know, SICs. I think it is good for the board to see that list and see specific things, even if we can't do it all. You know, they do realize in every school, we are seeing individual priority list, for lack of a better word. So I appreciate you getting this to us. And,
Yes, ma'am.
And I also really like the idea of the 5-year plan. And if we have money left over, I wanted to ask, is this like done in a priority list, or it's just listed not in, this is the most important thing, this is next?
Those are not necessarily in priority order as they're listed.
Okay.
That's just a
just
list
a
of
list,
everything
and
that's
then-
been requested.
Okay, but that was a question. Constituents from different schools asked me to thank you for letting them see that, you know, we as a board see these individual needs instead of just collectively saying needed items.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions about the school identified needs? Okay, and thanks for clarifying that it's a list that changes and evolves, and that's helpful too.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
And then finally, if you don't have any more questions, I was going to show you a number of pictures concerning the Chapin athletic facilities. We talked a little bit at the last board meeting about the fact that although we're in the process of completing a fairly sizable bond referendum project at Chapin, there's still needs up at the school with existing facilities. And many of the athletic facilities fall into that category. So we just wanted to show you some of the needs, and then we can talk about that more, I guess, at the next meeting. Oh, okay. Thanks, Mark. The first slide here, although you can't see it well, what those pictures show is some painting needs, some deteriorating steel or rusting steel around the press box in both of those two pictures. Next slide. It's not going. Oop. What this is intended to show you is the condition of the concrete within the stadium. Something that a lot of people...
It's not showing up here.
Sir?
It's not showing up.
I don't know. Not mine.
While they're setting this up, this is a new process that the board has adopted and that the administration has put together for us, that when you see us looking at the screen, it's the screen behind us, so we don't have to get up and move around and be disruptive. So we're very excited about this, and this little stop allowed me to explain what we're doing. So thank you, Rodney.
Yeah. It's not moving right.
Ms. Watson,
Yes.
may I ask a question that's on this?
Yes.
About that, I just thought of it, I had it marked. Our technology, which is, I think it's number 55, I was just wondering, wait a second, Mr. Carlin,
Ma'am,
that's part of the capital budget? I was thinking one time it was in another part of the budget, our technology, because we're always having to update and, we have to keep 2 or 3 steps ahead. I wondered, but it is on the capital budget?
yes, technology's on the second page
Yeah, I
of the
think
budget?
it's
At the
55.
bottom, yes, ma'am.
56.
And that's not new. We've had technology in the capital budget for,
Oh, okay, I was thinking at one
A
time.
number
it was
of years
in
now.
operational. But this is things that in the classroom, like, does this take in that expense, like tablets or whatever we have in the different schools?
this encompasses a number of technology items,
We
including
just kinda have it all in
infrastructure.
Umbrella,
Yes, ma'am.
whether it's computers in an office or it's what the kids are using in the classroom?
I think it's the full spectrum.
Okay.
I think that we'll just go ahead, Mr. Carlin, we can turn around and see. Rodney, that's all right. Yeah, we're fine, we're fine. We're used to doing this. Thank you so much.
Okay. Well, what I was going to ask, did you get an opportunity to see the first slide, or were you?
I saw it.
Go back if you don't mind.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
There we go, perfect.
That's perfect.
Again, that was just showing some of the painting needs up at the press box area. You can go back to the other slide. Okay. What I intended to show here was the condition of the concrete within the stadium itself. I think it's rarely known that concrete is something that needs to be addressed with maintenance, just like any other building product. You don't install it and then just walk away and forget about it. And particularly in a stadium, if the concrete is not addressed, because it's a porous material, if it's not coated, construction joints sealed, control joints sealed, then the stadium can degrade over time. And of course, the older it gets, the more it degrades exponentially. We did a project to coat the stadium at Irma High School back in 2006, very similar to what needs to be done here. And so I just wanted to show some of the deterioration that's going on in the stadium right now. It's not irreversible, but it does need to be addressed. Next slide. Just a little bit more of that. You can see the steps on the right there. Slow down just a sec. Go back just a second. Right. This shows the visitors' bleachers on the visitor side of the stadium. A little bit inadequate. Next slide. This is a picture underneath the concrete, the home side of the stadium, underneath the concrete, and you can see some water intrusion on the left side as well as the right. Again, because joints and cracks and things like that need to be addressed. Next slide. These are not as clear, but same situation there. Next slide. This shows, you can see it a little bit better on the left side where we've had some water intrusion in our stairwell walls leading up to the press box where it's popping the paint off the walls. Next slide. This is the field house next to the baseball field. And although you can't see it well on the right-hand side, it shows where some of the mortar joints have been deteriorating and need to be addressed. The picture on the left there shows some housing that covers some valves for the sprinkler system that really need to be updated. Next slide. This is a picture inside the field house. We've got some similar conditions on the left where the water intrusion is pushing the paint off the walls. And then we need to address the water heater on the right-hand side. Next slide. This is the press box next to the track. This may not be needed anymore, and if it does not, then we just need to demolish it, but it's in a fair state of disrepair. Next slide. This is the concession stand. This was actually constructed, I think it was constructed by a parent group years and years ago. Number of issues with this with deterioration. Next slide. That's the inside of the concession stand.
That's gross.
You can see on the pictures in the center and on the right where water intrusion has begun to damage that wood.
Mr.
Next.
Carlin, excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
That slide, go back to that one. They don't use that at all right now. Do they?
I think it is used.
Well, I'm looking at it on, I have it on my picture. The other board members may not, but it's really, looks like it's
Needs some attention.
some attention, definitely.
In this, the trailer there is the women's softball concession stand, for lack of a better term. Any questions on those? And again, the intent here was just to show you some of the condition of those existing facilities that were not addressed with the bond referendum, but do need to be addressed in some form or fashion if we're going to maintain those facilities.
Mr. Gant?
Mr. Carlin, back to that first slide, what was the item you mentioned as far as the press box and
Yeah, that's-
it involved had to join the stadium or? The
I'm
press
sorry?
box for, very first slide, you said what?
That was the press box that's over the home side of the stadium.
Right.
That's what both of those first two pictures were, yes, sir.
And what were the main issues going on with that? Just
Exterior painting
paint?
is
exterior
required.
painting?
Yes, sir.
And I wanted to explain a little bit, my motion was to eliminate not eliminate, but withhold item 33 from the rest of the approval, but you've given us a lot more detail. I know you're still working on that detail, you and Mr. Richardson, but
Yes, sir.
I think it became really evident with these concrete pictures that you do have to do things or you'll pay more money later, and it looks like we're at the later point on some of this. I would estimate that stadium's probably in the 35, 40-year range. I have no idea how old it is, do you?
Early 70s.
Early 70s. So I know that with that kind of detail, it'll help us a lot, but one of the items that we had asked Dr. Hefner about was if there were priorities in the district that, I know that that particular item is not a lot of money, even over 2 years, but if there are items that need to be addressed like that concrete, more specifically to save money now rather than spend more money 2 or 3 years from now, which might free up some other monies for items in the district as a whole that may be a higher priority than some of the things that might happen there. So that's the reasoning behind that, and I appreciate the fact that you've given us some pictures of it and explained part of it. But,
Yes, sir.
and I know there's probably some more detail that'll probably be needed, but maybe that listing, if the items could be broken down into what absolutely needs to be done now as opposed to something that could wait 4 or 5 years, and it wouldn't add cost to wait on it.
Okay.
And then I know there may be some items, you showed a mobile concession stand behind the girls softball. If that's an item because of Title IX or the way the regulations are with athletic laws, then we may have to address that sooner rather than later. So we'd like to know those kind of items, the have-to items versus the items a little further down the road, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does.
It might help us to make that decision. Probably shouldn't have made the motion until after you showed us the detail, but I think that's what we were after. Anybody, Ms. Watson, you have anything to add to that, or?
Well, I wanted to ask, when you mentioned the concession stand, or that cart, or whatever it was.
The trailer.
At the softball, so what is the request?
That we provide a press box / concession stand for the softball field.
Okay, so it would be a combination then?
Yes, ma'am.
If I could tag on, if we could get maybe a dollar amount attached, just like that item, if we knew what that dollar amount was to address that and fix it, maybe the dollar amount to do the concrete. I know that's hard to do, but, and then those items that could possibly wait, what they might represent of the total. I'm sure it'll help me, it might help the rest of the board too. Is that something you think you could work on a little bit for us?
we can provide a budget. Yes, sir.
The other, and I don't want to keep adding things, the items that we're not sure if the buildings are going to be there or not be there, is there a way to go ahead and find out? Just like I think you showed the ticket booth, which may not be used, may go away. That field house must have been an old field house. I saw fertilizer in there. That's probably not, probably tells me it's used for storage rather than field house now. Is that probably what I'm seeing?
No, it is still used by visiting teams during our seasons. I think, I'm certain that the fertilizer was a temporary placement.
Okay. Well, thank you. I just want to explain part of that reasoning behind that.
Yes, sir. Understand.
Thank you.
Ms. Hammond, you have
Mine
a
is a
question?
follow-up to that, if that's okay to ask. That was my question. I tried to make the note that you did use the word press box that we may not need, and then you mentioned if we didn't, we just tear it down. Did you say press box?
Ticket booth.
Ticket booth,
Ticket booth,
excuse me.
yes, ma'am.
So would it just be because of something we've already added, it's just not needed? Or did you?
Just because of the way they conduct ticket taking at events. I'm not sure that one is currently in use based on the restructuring of their operations there in the athletic, for various athletic events.
Well, I concur with Mr. Gant as far as somebody that knows about what it is they need and what might be obsolete. I think that would be very good to be presented to us, so as we make decisions about that, to know it is something that maybe doesn't need renovating and we don't need it anymore, and that money can go to something needed.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Lovelace?
On the water intrusion,
Yes, ma'am.
can you explain to the board how that's fixed? By paint or,
Well, I can explain what we did at Irma High School, and it would be a similar type project. There's a number of items that need to be addressed. Certainly, any joint, which is either a construction joint or a control joint in the stadium, needs to be routed out, cleaned, and reapplied. Also, if there's any areas where there's been exposure to rebar, the reinforcing steel in the stadium, that has to be dealt with in a particular way. And then a general coating that goes over the entire concrete, certainly flat horizontal surfaces of the stadium, and in some cases, the vertical surfaces as well. And it's like a paint, but it's more of a coating that's developed particularly for concrete that gets down into the pores, embeds itself, and creates that membrane that makes it, I wouldn't call it waterproof, but certainly water resistant to the elements.
what's the lifespan of that usually?
It should be.
It depends on the product, certainly at least 5 years. The product, they continue to make advances in the products.
Mr. Gant?
I had one more follow-up. I meant to mention this, but and I know Mr. Richardson wasn't here and Mr. McAllister wasn't either, but when we were so fortunate and our community approved our 2008 bond referendum, we prioritized our items. There were a number of items that didn't make the list. I don't think there's enough monies in this capital budget to look at some of those, but would it be possible to go in the archives and get that list? And I don't know if it's in your office or not, Mr. Carlin, but get that list and then maybe take a look at the list. I know some things that were on it have probably now been addressed through capital dollars. And maybe just look, and I think it'd be interesting to me. I remember there was a list. We decided on what the ideal amount of the bond would be, and we went with that. But I think that'd be of interest to the board to see what items were listed back in 2008 by our community as items they wanted to put in that bond referendum.
Now, was that for Chapin High School?
No, I'm talking about for the district, for the whole
Okay.
district. I remember it just got to a point, there was just a point we felt like we had a lot more needs than we ended up using,
Okay.
going for a bond. So I think that'd be of interest to the board, and it might give us some focus for where we head with future 8% funds or capital dollars at a piece at a time, and some of it I bet has been done.
We can certainly check into that. Yes, sir.
I think it'd be interesting.
And I'd like to add to that, I think that's a great idea. And then to incorporate Dr. Hefner's your vision and, because I know we've adapted as the needs have changed in this district. So it's good to see the history, but as you have evaluated and reevaluated, we would certainly welcome your input on that.
Well, and the Vision 2015 grew out of doing the projects that had been identified earlier, basically. So there was some maybe repurposing of some of those projects. But I think before we do our Vision 2020, we need to have that discussion where we talk about what it is that our board and our community wants as the next projects. Because I think there's a good number of items we need to talk about that are bigger ticket items than just ongoing routine maintenance.
I think the board very much interested in hearing that and having that discussion. Mr. White?
Yeah, I think, Mike, to sort of echo what Mr. Gant said, I think the list that we had years ago were the bigger ticket items that didn't get on the referendum, and not so much routine maintenance, but things that would probably take 8% money or another referendum to address.
Ms. Baumgartner?
I was in that committee, as well as Mr. White, and we prioritized the top 10 projects, and we've identified those, and then we had like maybe 5 or 6 that didn't quite make the cut. I know Nursery Road Elementary and Walls was the number 11, and one of the needs we did mention that did not get made, but we have since been able to adjust for, was the Alternative Academy. That was something that we recognized as a need. It did not make in the top 10, but we were able to use through Spring Hill High School. That was one that was identified. So we've got some that we've been able to identify and take care of, but, Walls in some of our wall-less classrooms are a huge priority, I think more so than there were back in the days. We sometimes want to be innovative, and you find out that's not always the best way. So
I think to follow on what Ms. Baumgartner is saying, and Mr. Gant, is that maybe, Scott, there's some bigger projects that got left off the referendum that probably are 8% money, another referendum, but you might be able to move some things off your capital projects budgets for long term if they're folded into some of these project needs. You might be able to relieve some of what he's juggling from year to year and year, because some of those projects may overlap to the extent they're renovating existing facilities. And it's been a long time since we looked at that list.
no, yeah.
I will tell you that the bond took care of a lot of infrastructure requirements at those schools, like Leapart, like certainly at Chapin High School, many of the schools that would have eventually become part of, the 8% capital replacement items that, you look at Seven Oaks with everything that was done, it's almost a brand-new school. Irmo Elementary School, it's almost a brand-new school. Leapart, it's almost a brand-new school. Chapin Elementary. So it has provided some relief that is allowing us to address a lot of these other needs.
Ms. Baumgartner?
Mr. Carlin,
Yes,
we were
ma'am.
just talking about, Nursery Road being number 11. And if there was some way we could look again at doing some major projects, because we're going to replace the roof there, and it looks like in 2019. So maybe, with that in sight, that if we could fix the walls and at the same time the heating and air, that would be, or address them at the same time, since you deal with walls and different things.
So certainly, if we were to do something like that, it would be ideal to try to combine some things into one project. What I would caution the board is that, trying to do too many big things in conjunction with this and trying to fund it all out of this 8% budget would be difficult. So perhaps looking at a different funding stream for some of those bigger projects might be worth looking at.
Any other questions? Once again, some very good conversation. Dr. Hefner?
Would you like for us to try to dig up the list from 2008. Ms. Stowers, do you think you can help us find that particular list? And us to bring it back and discuss that at your next board meeting, along with some other pressing needs that I think may have arisen since 2008?
Absolutely.
We'll be happy to do that.
Absolutely. That would
Thank
be,
you.
that would be great. Thank you very much. Mr. Richardson, I know this is all your area. Is there anything you want to add?
I guess the purpose of, in the past, the capital budget has sort of been a, at least from what I could see, exercise where a lot of wishes were given to the administration, and somebody decided what the priority was and gave everybody a little bit of the money. What we've tried to do here is to do some careful planning and look at items that we think that we need to address as far as our facilities that we currently have. We've tried to maintain the millage to be what has been set for the last several years without any kind of increases. Some of the items that the board is discussing now, I don't know that we could fund within the framework of what we currently have, and we may have to look at some other alternatives if we're looking at additions or major renovations or something. I'd just like for you to keep that in mind as we go through this process, and that may be something that we might want to address later.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Carlin. Appreciate this.
Yes, ma'am.
And that ends our, oh, no, we need to vote, excuse me. Thanks. May I have all in favor for approving the first reading of the 2016 capital budget with the exception of item 33? Please raise your hand in favor. All opposed? That passes 7-0. Next is the proposed 2015-16 school board meeting schedule. Are there any questions? We had discussion last time.
Is this, do we need a motion, or I can ask the question now? Is this-
Well, yeah, I'll take a motion, thank you.
Okay, this is to approve the, I'll make that, Ms. Watson. I move that we approve the 2015-2016 school board meeting schedule.
Is there a second? Ms. Lovelace seconds. Now, any discussion?
I know at last meeting, I made the statement that I thought it was great that whoever devised this, I guess Mr. Bounds, that we were going back to some of the schools just simply because of convenience and also people to come into our different schools in different areas. I did want to ask this question tonight, though. All of the people that have to work and get everything set up in our individual schools, and I know you're not going to tell me if it makes a difficulty on you, but I did want to get input, Mr. Bounds, from your staff. If, you know, it's easier if it was all at, like we used to do, most of them at the district office or somewhere where, because I know your staff has to go out and get things ready. And then
We
our
want to do
individ-
ma'am, we want to do what's best for the community and for the board. And so while it's certainly more work to come out to a school, we're happy to do that. And, you know, we're still working through, as you saw, some individual bugs with some of our computers as we try to take it to the next level. But I think we'll look at that as we go along with our new system and school board. And if we need to bring it back in a little bit more, then we can certainly make an adjustment. But as far as the work for our staff, we're happy to do it, and we serve at the pleasure of the board. And wherever you want to go, we'll set up the board a meeting for you.
Well, I appreciate that, and I didn't mean to in any way that we should change it, because I had made the statement, I thought that was good, but then I started thinking about how you have to bring things, and from my experience on the board, when we used to have a lot of them at the district office, because it was kind of central, then you guys worked there, so it was all ready. So I just wanted to put it in as a board member. I know all of
Thank
us
you.
appreciate what you do, and I just want to make this, or ask you
All
the
right.
question,
Thank
if
you,
this
Ms.
made it hard.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond. Any other questions? All right. All in favor of approving the 2015-16 school board meeting schedule as shown in Exhibit C, please raise your hands. All opposed, that passes 7-0. That ends our action agenda. Next is the discussion agenda with the proposed early release plan.